Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something really fundamental, building and keeping those family bonds strong.
Yeah, it's such a core part of life, isn't it?
Absolutely. We were talking about well-being, and this was a big piece.
Makes sense.
Our goal here is to pull out some, practical things, stuff you can actually use to strengthen those connections.
And it's so important. The podcast called Family, Your Original Team.
I liked that. And lifelong support system.
Exactly. It's not just a nice idea. It's about security, right?
Yeah.
Your mental, your emotional well-being.
Totally. They're the people who make the good times better and help you get through the tough stuff.
The podcast was clear, though. It takes effort. Life gets busy.
Oh, yeah. But the payoff.
Yeah.
Huge. For happiness, health, all of it.
So where do we start? The podcast kicked off with prioritizing time together.
Right. Which sounds simple.
But it's more than just being in the same house.
Definitely. It's about really engaging, being, present.
They mentioned this family, the Thompsons, in Cincinnati.
Yeah, the Sunday dinners.
Right. And it wasn't about fancy food. Sometimes it was cake out.
It was the consistency.
That's it. The shared time, the talking, just the ritual of it. It builds that sense of security, belonging.
So for you listening, maybe think about where those moments are in your week or where they could be.
And what gets in the way.
Yeah.
Usually distractions, right?
Yeah. Life is just fast.
Which is why you have to be intentional. The podcast stressed that.
Like actually scheduling it, a family night or something.
Yeah, movie night, board games, cooking, whatever works.
And the tech-free zones idea, that feels important.
Definitely. Especially the dinner table. Putting phones away changes the whole dynamic.
Makes sense.
But it's also the small things,
Like bedtime stories.
Oh.
Or just chatting in the morning.
Exactly. Those little moments add up over time. Build strong connections.
Okay, so time together, being present. What's next? The podcast talked a lot about communication.
Open and honest communication. Which, let's be real, can be tricky.
Yeah, especially sensitive topics.
But feeling heard, feeling respected, that's how you build trust. Emotional closeness.
Mm-hmm.
The podcast had this really cool example, the Riveras, San Diego.
No, the check-in jar. I liked that.
Such a clever idea. Write stuff down anonymously.
And then talk about it on Friday nights if the person's okay with it.
Right. It creates a safe space, doesn't it?
Right.
Especially if someone's not comfortable just, blurting things out.
Totally. So besides a jar, what are some, general good communication habits?
Well, active listening is huge.
Meaning?
Really listening, not just waiting to talk. Making eye contact, trying to get their perspective, the feelings behind the words.
Okay.
And maybe reflecting back what you heard. Shows you're actually listening.
That makes sense. And using I statements.
Oh, yeah. Crucial. I feel unheard when. Instead of, you never listen.
Less attacking, more about your feelings.
Exactly. Encourages empathy, not defensiveness.
Good point. The podcast also mentioned encouraging everyone to speak up. Kids, too.
Yeah, and not shying away from tough stuff.
Yeah.
Money, mental health.
Just tackling it honestly. Age appropriately, of course.
Right. Okay, shifting slightly. Showing appreciation. Gratitude.
Seems simple, but the podcast said it has a massive impact.
It really does. Everyone wants to feel valued. Small, regular bits of gratitude. They really boost relationships.
Like that family in Raleigh, the Johnsons.
Yeah. Thankful Thursdays. Leaving little notes places.
In lunchboxes, under pillows. That's sweet. Kind of fun.
It is. A little surprise. But beyond notes, what else?
Well, just saying thank you more.
Yeah. Even for routine things. Clearing the table, whatever. Don't take it for granted.
Acknowledging the effort.
And handwritten notes still feel special, don't they?
They really do.
Also, celebrating successes. Big ones, small ones. And noticing the effort, not just the result.
That's important. Effort matters. Okay, what about traditions and routines?
Yeah. These are the family's identity markers.
This is us. This is what we do.
Exactly. And they give stability, predictability.
Yeah.
Which kids especially need.
Feels secure.
Definitely. They kind of hold things together.
The podcast mentioned that family with the pancake dance-off, the Parkers.
Yeah. Started as a joke on Saturday mornings.
It's often those quirky things that stick, isn't it?
Totally. So other ideas? Maybe regular movie nights? Take turns picking?
Or holiday rituals. Baking, decorating.
Annual yes day? Within limits, maybe?
Yeah, I gotta have limits.
Or volunteering together. Shared purpose is powerful.
That's a great one. Okay, so we've got time, communication, appreciation, traditions. But the podcast also talked about individuality.
Right. So important. Even in a tight family, everyone's still their own person.
And valuing that uniqueness is key.
Yeah, it fosters acceptance, belonging. The Millers in Portland, their passion project time.
Where everyone shares something they're into.
Yeah. Guitar, history, facts, Lego, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Celebrating individual interests in a shared space.
Love that. So how do we show that respect day to day?
Well, first off, avoid comparing people. Siblings especially.
Focus on their strengths instead.
Exactly. Give space when needed. Teenagers, introverts. Respect that need.
Yeah.
Encourage different interests, even if they're not your interest.
And just be open to different views.
Yeah. Okay, inevitably, conflict.
Right. It happens in any close relationship.
Totally normal. The key is how you handle it.
Handled well, it can actually strengthen things.
Yeah, build understanding.
Yeah.
Handled badly, it just damages trust, creates resentment.
So what does handling it well look like?
Remember the Garcia family? Austin.
The code word, orange.
Yeah. Such a smart, practical tool. Things get heated, someone says orange, everyone takes a break.
Cool off, come back calmer.
Exactly. That emotional regulation piece is vital.
So beyond a code word, what else?
Try to stay calm, respectful, even when you really disagree.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Oh, for sure. But try. Focus on the issue, not the person. No name-calling, blaming, bring up old stuff.
Keep it current.
Right. Take breaks if you need them, but agree to come back to it.
Don't just drop it.
No. And then apologize sincerely and forgive.
That forgiveness piece is huge.
Absolutely. Two-way street.
Okay, another angle the podcast hit was supporting dreams and goals.
Oh, yeah. Knowing your family's cheering you on, that's incredibly powerful.
Gives you confidence.
And a cushion when things go wrong. The Wilsons. Nashville. The Family Dream Board.
With pictures and words for everyone's goal.
Yeah, and they check in monthly, offer encouragement.
That's a great visual. So, everyday support, what does that look like?
Just ask about their goals. Show you're actually interested. Celebrate the steps along the way, even small ones.
Offer help.
But don't take over.
Right.
And just believe in them, especially when they're struggling. Your belief can make a real difference.
That's really powerful. Okay, let's talk about simple kindness. Compassion.
Yes, the small stuff again. But it creates that warm, safe feeling at home, emotional comfort.
It's kind of the foundation, isn't it?
Totally. The Browns in Chicago did that kindness bingo.
Oh, yeah. What was the squares?
Things like say something nice to someone, do a chore without being asked, offer help.
A fun way to make it intentional.
Exactly. But everyday stuff counts too. Holding doors, please and thank you.
Offering compliments. Doing little favors.
Checking in if someone seems down. Just showing you care. It all adds up.
Okay, circling back to conflict. Forgiveness came up again.
Yeah, it's essential. You can't move forward if you're holding on to resentment.
Grudges are toxic.
Totally. The podcast shared that story about Lisa. Her dad missed her recital.
But he made it up to her. Created a special redo at home.
Right. Showed he's genuinely sorry. And that allowed her to forgive.
That effort to make amends matters. So how do we make forgiveness more of a habit?
Own your stuff. Apologize sincerely when you mess up. No excuses.
And on the flip side?
Try to forgive freely when someone else apologizes. Don't keep score.
Model it for kids.
Definitely. And maybe let go of perfectionism. For yourself and others. Give each other some grace.
We all need grace sometimes. Okay, last big area. Facing challenges together.
Yeah, life throws curveballs. Illness, job loss, difficult times.
And those times can either pull families apart
or weld them together.
Stronger. It's about choosing to face it as a team.
Absolutely. Builds resilience. Remember Rivera's story, the breast cancer diagnosis?
And how her family rallied, shaving heads, meals, appointments.
Yeah, it was incredibly hard, obviously, but she said it paradoxically brought them closer.
Wow, that's powerful. So any advice for families going through tough times? How do you stay united?
Be honest about what's happening. Age appropriately, of course.
Communicate.
Lean on each other emotionally.
Share the load.
Definitely. Divide tasks.
Yeah.
And try to find small things to celebrate. Keep hope alive.
It really sounds like it comes down to being conscious about it, intentional.
It does. It's ongoing work. Takes time, patience, communication, love.
But the rewards, that support, the shared joy, knowing someone has your back.
It's priceless, really. An enduring gift.
And it's never too late to start strengthening those connections, is it?
Never. Small steps, consistently. Kindness, understanding. You can always deepen those bonds.
So just to recap everything we've touched on from this deep dive, prioritizing that quality time,
Open communication, active listening,
showing appreciation, gratitude,
building those traditions and routines,
respecting everyone's individuality,
handling conflict constructively,
supporting dreams and goals,
simple kindness and compassion,
the absolute necessity of forgiveness.
and facing challenges as a team.
It's all connected, isn't it?
Totally. Kindness makes communication easier. Traditions create chances for appreciation. It all works together, a whole system for a thriving family.
Exactly. So our final thought for you listening, which of these points really hit home for you today?
Yeah, what's maybe one small thing, one intentional step you could take this week?
Because remember, even those small efforts, if they come from a place of love and understanding, can make a huge difference to the people you care about most.
So if you're thinking about studying or maybe working over in an English-speaking country, chances are you've bumped into the TOEFL exam.
It's pretty unavoidable for many people.
And let's be real, that listening section, it can feel like a real challenge, especially if English isn't the language you use every single day.
Oh, absolutely. It can feel pretty daunting, that feeling of, okay, where do I even begin with this?
Right. So think of this session today as our deep dive. We're aiming to really sharpen those listening skills for you.
Yeah, and help you kind of decode what those TOEFL listening questions are actually asking, give you some strategies, boost your confidence, make you feel ready.
Okay, let's jump right in then. The TOEFL listening section. What's its main goal?
Well, at its heart, it's trying to figure out how well you understand spoken English in like an academic context.
So university lectures, professors' office hours, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And also just everyday campus chat. So what should you expect, practically speaking? Timing, number of questions.
Good question. You're looking at somewhere between 41 and 57 minutes for the section.
Okay. And in that time,
You'll be tackling about 28 to 39 questions.
right. And the audio itself, what are you listening to?
Two main kinds. You'll definitely hear academic lectures, a professor talking.
And sometimes students might jump in, ask questions, maybe interrupt.
Yeah, exactly, to make it feel more like a real class. Very realistic.
Okay. And the second type?
That's the everyday campus conversations. So a bit less formal.
Like students talking to each other. Or maybe a student and a librarian.
Or a student having a quick word with a professor, yeah.
Yeah.
Those kinds of interactions.
And after each clip, you get questions.
Yep. Usually 5 or 6 multiple choice questions, testing your understanding of what you just heard.
It's interesting, though, why are strong listening skills so important here? It feels like it's more than just catching individual words, right?
Oh, definitely. It's much more about grasping the nuances in how people actually talk.
Nuances like,
Well, think about just the different speeds people speak at. That alone could be tricky.
true. Or all the different accents you might run into.
Accents are a big one, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you've got all those casual expressions, idioms.
Like hit the books.
Exactly. Doesn't mean you actually hit them.
Right. And people use filler words naturally, too, don't they?
We all do it. And then there's connected speech, how words sort of run together.
Yeah, like going to, becoming gonna. Sounds blend. Or even disappear sometimes.
That can really trip you up if you're not expecting it, if you're listening for every single distinct word.
For sure. So working on these listening skills isn't just about getting a good TOEFL score then.
Not at all. Improving your listening genuinely makes your own English better overall. Your fluency, how you speak.
Pronunciation, rhythm.
Yeah, just general communication, really. Being more effective no matter the situation.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So if you really want to, nail this listening section, what are the absolute core skills you need?
Well, number one is probably just getting the main idea, the gist.
Understanding the overall topic, the main point of it all.
Yeah, and often that's kind of hinted at near the beginning, right?
Often, yeah. Or it's a theme that keeps coming back. So pay attention right from the start. Key.
Okay, main idea. Got it. What's next?
Then you need to be able to pick out the supporting details.
The specifics.
Exactly. Catching those facts, the explanations, the examples that actually back up the main idea, that's the substance,
Right. It's not enough just to know the topic. You need the evidence, too.
Absolutely. Another really vital skill is understanding the speaker's angle, their perspective.
Angle. What do you mean by that? Like how they feel?
Yeah, exactly. How they feel, their tone, emotions, maybe their purpose. Are they trying to persuade you or just inform or maybe complain?
So Not just what they say, but how and why they're saying it.
Precisely. And kind of tied into that is the skill of inferring meaning.
Reading between the lines.
That's the one. Understanding things that aren't said directly but are definitely implied.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure, like a speaker might not say, I disagree, but their tone, or maybe how they phrase something.
Like, well, that's one way of looking at it.
Exactly. That signals disagreement without stating it outright. You gotta catch those subtle clues.
Okay, that's subtle. Is there a final key skill?
Yeah, I'd say seeing the connections between ideas.
How things link together.
Understanding relationships like cause and effect or comparison, or just grasping the overall structure of how the information is organized.
Okay, got it. So main idea, details, speaker's angle, inference, and connections. That feels like a good map of the listening tasks involved.
It covers the main thinking processes, yeah.
So knowing those skills, how does the TOEFL actually frame its questions to test them? What kinds of questions should you be ready for?
Well, you'll definitely see what they call gist content or gist purpose questions.
Sounds like main idea stuff.
It is. They'll ask things like, what's the main topic? Or what's the lecture mainly about?
Or maybe, why is the student talking to the professor? That kind of purpose.
Exactly. That's the purpose part.
Seems straightforward enough. What else?
Then you get detailed questions.
These zoom in on specific bits of info. Facts. Examples.
Yep. According to the professor, what was the primary cause of X? Or maybe, what example does the student mention? You need to have caught those supporting details we talked about.
Crucial for those, yeah. Okay. What about function questions? Function. How do those work?
These ask why a speaker says a particular thing, often just a short phrase.
Like, why does the student say, oh, I see?
Precisely. It's about understanding their intention, their reaction, maybe their tone, or just what purpose that little phrase serves right then in the conversation.
Understanding the subtext. Okay, so that links back to that speaker's angle skill.
It does. And closely related are attitude questions.
These ask directly about feelings or opinions.
Yep. What is the professor's attitude toward? Or what's the professor's opinion of the new theory?
Or how does the student feel about the assignment?
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned structure earlier. Is there a question type for that? There is. They're called organization questions.
And they focus on how the information is presented, how the lecture is built.
Exactly. How does the professor organize the information about X? Or maybe, what does the speaker discuss first, then second? Following the flow.
Okay. And we talked about inferring meaning.
Yep. And there are inference questions for that.
Asking you to deduce something not explicitly stated.
Correct. Making that logical jump based on the clues provided in the audio.
Like, what can be inferred about the student's study habits? Or what does the professor imply about future research?
Exactly. Requires careful listening for those implications.
It really does. And finally, you mentioned connecting content questions.
Right. Connecting content.
How's that different from organization?
It's maybe a bit more specific, less about the overall structure and more about how particular pieces of information relate to each other, or maybe relate back to the main point.
Okay, like how an example supports an argument.
Exactly that. How does the example of the ants illustrate the concept of X? Or what's the relationship between the two studies mentioned? Those kinds of links.
Wow. Okay, that's quite a range of question types to prepare for.
It is, but understanding them really helps you know what you should be listening for.
Absolutely. Now, we can't really talk about understanding spoken English, especially academic English, without hitting vocabulary, can we?
No way. Strong vocabulary is, well, it's fundamental, especially for those academic lecture topics.
So what kind of vocabulary should you really focus on?
Well, first, those core academic words, the ones you see popping up in textbooks and lectures across different subjects.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. Words like hypothesis, phenomenon, analysis, perspective, contradiction, implication, framework, that sort of level.
Words common across discipline.
Exactly. Then, really pay attention to transition words, linking words.
Like, moreover, however, consequently.
For instance, in contrast, yeah. They signal the relationships between ideas. They're like signposts guiding you through the logic of the argument.
They really are. Recognizing them helps you follow the structure much easier. Okay. Academic words, transition words. What else?
Don't forget everyday idioms. Even in academic chats, you'll hear common expressions.
Like hit the books or on the same page.
Yeah. Or maybe cutting corners, get the hang of something, a rule of thumb. They definitely appear.
Good point. Are there also common phrases you hear specifically in lectures, like things professors often say?
Oh, definitely. Recognizing common lecture phrases can give you a kind of heads up.
Like what sort of phrases?
Things like, okay, let me elaborate on that, which obviously signals more detail is coming.
Right.
Or you might be wondering why, suggesting they're about to explain a reason. Or maybe this brings us to our next point.
Clear transition markers within the lecture itself. That's really useful to listen for.
Yeah. So it sounds like actively building your vocabulary in these specific areas is really key.
Yeah, absolutely is. And a really practical way to do that. Flashcards.
Old school paper ones or, apps on your phone, many use spaced repetition.
Ah, right. The ones that show you the word again just before you're likely to forget it.
Exactly. That method's really effective for getting vocabulary into your long-term memory. Reviewing at increasing intervals works.
Smart. Okay. So, we know the skills, the questions, the vocab. What about actual strategies while you're listening? How can you boost your comprehension right there in the moment?
Well, the absolute foundation is to engage actively. It sounds simple, but it's crucial.
Meaning, don't just let the sound kind of wash over you.
Exactly. Don't just passively hear it. Focus. Focus on the meaning. Listen for the speaker's tone. Try to track how the information's being organized as you listen. Be present.
Right. And building on that active engagement, taking organized notes is a huge advantage.
We touched on notes. What makes them organized, though? How do you do that effectively?
Develop a system that works for you. Use abbreviations, symbols, whatever saves you time, but still makes sense when you look back at it later.
Like maybe an arrow for leads to or causes?
Perfect example.
Right.
And maybe divide your page or screen into rough sections. Main idea, key details, examples, questions you might have.
Okay, but what if the lecture isn't super structured? What if it kind of jumps around a bit? How do you adapt your note-taking then?
That's a really good point. If it feels less linear, don't stress about making your notes perfectly neat and ordered right then.
Okay.
Focus more on just capturing the key words and key phrases for each idea as it comes up.
So grab the important bits, regardless of the order.
Yeah. You can mentally group them later, or even physically draw little lines or circles in your notes to connect related points after the audio finishes.
Right. The goal isn't to make beautiful notes.
Exactly. It's notes that jog your memory effectively when you get to the questions.
Okay, that's helpful. Any other strategies for in-the-moment listening?
Try to predict, especially as you get towards the end of a section of audio. Think. What kind of questions are they likely to ask about this part?
Anticipating the test questions. Sort of.
Yeah. It keeps you actively engaged and helps you listen specifically for potential answers or key information related to the likely question types. It sharpens your focus.
That's a clever tactic, almost like priming your brain for what's needed. And I guess just hearing lots of different kinds of English is important too, right? Accents.
Oh, for sure. Expose yourself to various accents.
Yeah.
American, British, Australian, maybe Indian English, Canadian.
The more variety you hear in practice, the less likely you are to be thrown off by a particular accent on test day. Get comfortable with that diversity.
Definitely. Now, you mentioned shadowing earlier. Can you explain that technique a bit more?
Sure. Shadowing is basically repeating what you hear almost immediately after the speaker says it.
In real time.
Yeah, or just a fraction of a second behind. You're trying to mimic their pronunciation, their rhythm, their intonation as closely as you can.
Sounds challenging.
It can be at first, but it's fantastic practice. It really tunes your ear to the sounds and the flow of natural English.
And it can improve your own speaking, too.
It really can. Your rhythm, your naturalness, plus you absolutely have to pay close attention to do it.
Forces that active listening. Okay, those are some solid strategies. Now, where can people actually find good practice material, especially, free stuff?
Good question. There are definitely great free resources out there. First place to look, the official TOEFL practice materials from ETS, the people who make the test.
Can't get more authentic than that.
Exactly. It gives you the real feel. Beyond that, TED Talks are excellent.
Oh, yeah. Lots of academic style talks, right? On all sorts of subjects.
Grips for academic vocab, understanding lecture structure, and they're usually pretty interesting too. Keeps you engaged.
What else?
Look at sites like BBC Learning English or VOA Learning English.
They often have audio and transcripts specifically designed for learners.
Yeah, tailored content. And podcasts, of course. Things like NPR for news and interviews, or even shows like The English We Speak from the BBC, which focuses on idioms and everyday phrases.
So a good mix of academic and more general listening is ideal.
Ideally, yes. Get exposure to different styles.
Okay. Loads of resources then. But just listening isn't quite enough, right? How do you build a consistent practice habit?
Right. You need some structure. A good goal might be to listen to, say, one lecture or maybe a couple of shorter campus conversations each day.
Make it a daily thing.
Yeah, and then do something with it afterwards.
Like what?
Try writing a short summary of the main points. Test your own comprehension.
Okay.
And make a list of any new words or idioms you heard. Look them up. Try to learn them actively.
Active vocabulary building.
And finally, if you can find related questions, maybe answer 5 practice questions linked to that audio clip you just listened to.
So listen, summarize, learn vocab, answer questions. Like a mini workout for your listening skills.
Pretty much. And even just 30 minutes of that kind of focused practice daily can make a huge difference over time. Consistency really is key.
That sounds manageable. Now, even with practice, people hit roadblocks. What are some common pitfalls in the listening section, and how can you get past them?
Okay. Common mistake number 1, passive listening. Just letting the audio play without really engaging mentally.
We talked about active listening being key.
So the solution is use those active note-taking strategies we discussed. Try to anticipate where the speaker's going. Stay mentally involved.
Got it. What's another common problem?
Trying to understand every single word. People get stuck on one unfamiliar word and then miss the next sentence or two because they panicked.
Yeah, that panic moment. I know it well.
Exactly. So the solution here is really focus on the big picture. Get the main idea. Catch the key supporting points. It's okay if you miss a word here or there, as long as you're following the overall meaning.
Don't let perfect be the enemy of good understanding.
Well put. Another pitfall. Maybe not using TOEFL-specific practice materials enough. Relying too much on generic listening practice.
Right. While any listening helps, you really need to get used to the specific types of audio, the pace, and especially the question formats of the actual TOEFL.
So the solution is obvious. Prioritize official or TOEFL-style materials. Make them a core part of your prep.
Definitely. And the last big one relates back to notes again. Taking messy or just unhelpful notes.
Just scribbling everything down without structure. Or trying to write full sentences, which is way too slow.
Yeah. The solution goes back to developing that system that works for you. Use symbols, abbreviations, keywords.
Focus on capturing meaning efficiently, not transcribing the whole thing. Use your notes as memory triggers, not a full script.
Exactly. Keep them concise and focused on what you'll likely need for the questions.
Those are great tips for avoiding common mistakes. Now, for listeners who maybe want a more structured approach, could you sketch out, say, a 4-week study schedule outline?
Sure, we could outline something like this. Let's say week 1 is all about building the base, laying the groundwork right.
Okay.
Every day, listen to maybe 1 campus conversation and 1 academic lecture. Practice those note-taking skills, write summaries.
Get the fundamentals down.
And aim to learn maybe 20 new core academic words during that week using flashcards or an app.
Okay, solid start. Week 2.
Week 2. Focusing on strategies. Really dive deep into understanding those different question types, detail, inference, attitude, etc. Get familiar with what they're asking.
And practice specifically with trickier types, like inference questions.
Exactly. And also, try to complete maybe 2 full TOEFL listening practice sections under time conditions this week.
Okay, upping the intensity and focusing on the test mechanics. What about week 3?
Week 3. More real-world practice. Simulate the actual test conditions as closely as you can. Time yourself strictly.
Full simulation.
Yes. And critically, after you do a practice section, carefully review any questions you got wrong. Figure out why you missed them. Was it vocab, misunderstanding, missed detail?
Learning from mistakes is crucial.
Totally. Also, maybe incorporate some shadowing practice this week and try paraphrasing sections of the audio just to check your understanding really deeply.
Okay, intensive review and active practice techniques. And the final week, week 4.
Week 4 is about refining and final prep. Aim to take maybe 3 full practice listening tests this week.
More full simulations.
Yes. Really focus any extra study time on the question types you still find most difficult based on your reviews. Polish your note-taking speed and efficiency.
And keep reviewing that vocabulary, working on quick recall.
Exactly. It's about fine-tuning everything and building confidence right before the test.
That sounds like a really solid, progressive 4-week plan. Thanks for outlining that. Before we wrap up, any final nuggets of wisdom? Maybe some last bits of advice from language experts for our listeners?
Yeah, a few key things come to mind. First, consistency beats cramming. every single time.
Little and often is better than one huge stressful session.
Much better for learning and remembering. Even just 30 focused minutes a day makes a real difference.
Good reminder. Second,
Learn vocabulary in chunks or phrases, not just isolated words. Understand how words actually work together in context. See them in action.
right. And don't be afraid to listen to audio clips more than once, especially when practicing.
Definitely. You often catch much more the second or third time, nuances, details you missed initially.
Okay. Anything else?
Practicing paraphrasing, saying things in your own words, is fantastic for checking your understanding, especially for those inference questions. It shows you really grasped the underlying meaning.
It does. And finally, maybe the most important thing on test day itself. Try to stay calm.
Easier said than done, I know.
But if you miss something, if your mind wanders for a second, don't panic.
Yeah. Just take a breath, refocus, and catch the next part. Dwelling on a missed bit will only make you miss more information.
Good advice. Don't let one slip derail the whole section. Focus forward.
Exactly. This has been incredibly helpful.
So, as everyone gears up for the TOEFL listening section, the big takeaway seems to be it's not just about passively hearing English float by.
Not at all. It's about active, strategic engagement with the language, focusing on smart note-taking, really understanding the question types.
Building that specific academic vocabulary, and just immersing yourself in academic style English through consistent practice.
If you do that, you're really setting yourself up well.
And remember, these skills go way beyond just the test, too.
Yeah.
They help you truly connect and communicate more effectively in the long run.
Absolutely. Mastering this kind of listening unlocks a lot. Understanding different perspectives, engaging more deeply in conversations, in lectures, it's a valuable skill for life, really.
Well said. Keep all this guidance in mind as you work towards your goals.
So here's a final thought for you to maybe chew on.
Yeah.
Pick just one skill we talked about today. Maybe actively listening for transition words or consciously trying to infer a speaker's attitude. And consciously apply only that one skill the next time you're listening to English, a podcast, a meeting, anything. Just see what new insights you gain, what hidden layers might suddenly pop out at you. Give it a try.